Sauce.
Hey, you like Pez?
It looks like that. Here's Heaney from the boundary line. He's an expert at these. From the boundary line!
Hello and welcome to Behind the Boundary podcast. I'm your host Pez. I'm here with Sauce on a Thursday afternoon, ready for Thursday night footy to kick off round 17. We're getting to the back end of the season here, Sauce.
Yes, Pez, the business time of the season, and surprisingly, the season is still open for a lot of teams. You know, teams scraping in a couple of wins last week for some upsets that keep their seasons alive. A draw last week that kept two teams alive instead of killing a season for one of them, but really, really interesting going into, as you said, the final part of the season.
Yeah, and the final part of our loser comp, actually, which ended on the weekend as well. So congratulations to Paul, who took out over $1,300 and just a lazy $1,300 for a $20 entry.
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, he get back, what's that, 100 times? Yeah, it's a lot more than 100 times your profit, but that's a lot. I mean, that's one way to win a bit of money besides following across our great tips, but he did fantastic. First time actually entrance to the show. And
took some risks early on, and they paid off. And he was ready to go. So it was down to two, and he won it on Saturday night without even to have his tip on the Sunday, because last man standing, he was able to get it through.
In classic fashion, I reckon every single year that we have it decided, the last man standing rule comes into play with the other participant choosing GWS to lose, and of course they didn't lose against Melbourne, but it was all done and dusted with a game of inches, a nice little after the siren kick that won his season for him.
Yeah, it was a big kick, and you mentioned that. That was a game and a half there at the MCG on Saturday night, where Essendon stole the lead back and they were in a winning position, and then they just had a rush kick out of defensive 50 marked by Dan Houston, probably one of maybe two players with Kane Farrell, who could have probably kicked that goal at the end of the game, but sailed through quite easily. There's a good couple of still pictures of the line as well, with the goal umpire trying to see, and it was great for Port Adelaide, who continue to keep their season alive, and Essendon just fall short yet again of getting a scalp.
Well, it had vibes of that the earlier game against Richmond, that Essendon, where they came from behind, they snuck the win, they had the momentum, a great little shot from 30 metres out to steal the lead, and yeah, just a defensive blunder, the way that the ball, you know, they had the clearance there. All they needed to do was go down the line, and instead they bombed it up in the air, a diving mark, and a great kick after the siren. And there was a nice little stat there. Port Adelaide have had the most after the siren wins in their short, for the amount of games that they've been around.
Oh, there you go. That's a very good stat that they're always in the game there. But I thought the first quarter they absolutely dominated, and it just reminds you and reminds everyone out there that you need to take your chances and you need to kick the goals. 2 goals 7 in the first quarter to 2 goals 2 to Essendon. Port Adelaide absolutely dominated every single statistic and just could not get a lead. They went in with a 5-point lead to quarter time, and they had to win the game after the siren. So they should have blown that game away in the first quarter, and they weren't able to do it. So if that's a final and they're not able to get that kick and they're not able to have a little bit of luck involved as well, then that costs teams big time. Like I think of Nat Fyfe against Hawthorn in the grand final, missing those 3 goals in the first quarter, just not too good.
But taking opportunities, as you said, Pez, like, you know, we've talked about this for most of the year, especially with Carlton's recent form of how badly they've been kicking. But, you know, if you don't take your opportunities in front of goal, well, then it definitely costs you and it can set up your season. If you look at, you know, the Friday night clash, Sydney versus Geelong, both teams in the end, but Sydney mainly early on, didn't put away Geelong. They let Geelong hang around, and then they escaped with a draw and had multiple opportunities to win it with under 5 minutes to go.
Geelong were the ones in a winning position at the end of the game, but Sydney should have won that game by 5-6 goals easily if they took their chances. They had Robbie Fox running into an open goal, hitting the post. Tom Hickey missing a few. I think it was Tom Hickey. Was it Heaney and Fox or something? Was 0, 7 and 4 out on the full. Yeah. Something ridiculous. So many kicks went out on the full from set shots that just kept Geelong in the game for a long period of time, and Geelong in the end escaped with 2 points, which really helps them in the season.
And I think what, you know, you just mentioned it before, is leaving teams in this day and age alive for 4 quarters of footy, and how close the league is. I mean, you know, from 5th to I think it's about 11th or 12th, there's only a couple of games that separate those teams, and there's so many teams that season is still alive. because of poor footy, and everyone is looking for an easy win. But you've got to calculate. Sorry, you've got to make sure that you take those opportunities. It's basic stuff. It really is.
Well, how's this? 13th, 14th, and 15th sit on 26 points for the season, and two teams in the 8 in Essendon and Adelaide sit on 32. So they're a game and a half out of the 8. Richmond, Carlton, Sydney sitting 13th, 14th, and 15th. Yeah. All with realistic chances if they have a good back end to the season to actually make finals. So closest season I remember in a while, and the top 4 race is going to be something special as well.
It definitely is. And speaking of races, let's race straight into our bet review and see how we're faring for season 2023.
Soft review. It's no official review. How does it end? We don't know. They kind of lost, but they won as well.
Well, let's have a look. Kind of lost, kind of won as well. That's very prevalent in round 16 for us. But we started with Brisbane versus Richmond, and we popped up our little video out on Twitter and on TikTok, and nearly everything we said was correct here, Sauce. I had Neil over 29.5. He shitted that in. McCluggage over 22.5. Shitted it in as well. Both big bets on those ones because I was quite confident. So those ones both got through, and I really enjoyed that Thursday night.
Yeah, I was enjoying that Thursday night till a little bit of an ankle injury because, as you said, the things that we said, McKenna in the back line, the Richmond giving away a lot of the pill to defenders, and we saw obviously our mate Coleman, who we've been on the last couple of weeks, he got his overs, and the main midfielders, Lockie Neal for 30, and Dunkley, a little bit of an ankle injury. They rested him up in that last quarter, fell 5 short, but early days, I think he had 13 in the first quarter. He was looking well above board.
He was on track for 30 easy, and he just had a little complaint in the calf. He sat a lot of time on the bench in that third quarter, and he came back on and got another 5 disposals, so he got up to 20.
Just like that too, yeah.
And
then they needed 5 more.
Off, sub you out, precautionary. They didn't need him in the end because they won the game by 80 points. But that's what happens in punting, and if you pick the right player but they get injured, it's happened to us a few times this season. If you punt on player disposals or player anytime goal scorers, it will happen to you eventually as well. We head to Sydney and Geelong, and I put 2 units out on Geelong to win. And I did not like the first half in there. So the whole second half, I'm sitting on my phone on Bet365 and Sportsbet, just looking at live odds there, Sauce. And eventually I found something when Geelong went up by 8 points. Sydney were pushing and Geelong were trying to save the game. So I thought if Sydney can just get a point here, plus 7.5 is really good. So I put Sydney plus 7.5. The next score was a Sydney goal, so it was 2 points in it. And I was like, come on, just kick her behind Sydney, get Geelong to win and get Sydney in between 1 to 7. It would have been a big cleanup, but it wasn't. But I just saved face a little bit with that. The other one I had was Nick Blakey 20 plus disposals. I ended up getting the most disposals with 29. That was at $1.71 in the end. So it was a profitable night. It was a profitable night. No, I liked this game for Geelong, a team that doesn't normally collect the footy a lot, but again, Sydney gives away a lot to the defenders. So I was all over Stewart and Duncan, and we saw that that prediction of defenders filling up with Tui getting a lot of the pill with the kickouts mainly. Tui first, yeah.
But as I said, with those sort of trends, they pay out. So you're happy with that. I was a bit happy with $2.10. Nice 2 units, 2 bets, 2 players. Nice and simple.
Second half was a bit better for Tommy Stewart, wasn't it? But don't you hate it when you put a player on and you're like, yep, they take a lot of kickouts, and then for whatever reason, for a whole half, they hardly take one, and you're just like, shit, do I have the wrong bloke here? But
it's not a good feeling, and I sometimes. Like Tommy Stewart in that third quarter didn't go near a kick out, but in the last quarter they went into his boot every single time, and perfect out to the side, little 1-2 because they use him as that connecting handball.
But the other thing, how good is the feeling if you've got a little same game multi when your players link up? It happened on Thursday night a lot with Lockie Neal and Josh Dunkley. And even Connor McKenna to those guys as well, but it happened with your 2 in Tommy Stewart.
Stewart to Duncan. There was, I think they got four handball receives and gets within the space of 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm messaging you on delay or watching a good old KO with 3 or 4 minutes delay.
It's so frustrating messaging you when I'm like, just fucking plug an aerial in, go on free to air.
I think it was one of the best calls. I was speaking to my girlfriend. I was at her house and her Wi-Fi sort of not great, so on the KO it sort of pauses. And I message you, I'm like, I'm on delay, please don't ruin it. And you're like, just turn it on channel 7. I'm like, she doesn't have an aerial. And you're like, she really needs to grow up. Become an adult, grab an aerial. But this day and age,
just get a coat hanger. Get something. Like if your Wi-Fi is no good, you need free to air footy. But The next day, Adelaide versus North Melbourne. Now, I really like this bet and I like this trend. It didn't pay off for me in the end. I had Josh Rochelle for 2+ goals. He had a tough shot from about 45 out in the first quarter, which he didn't score from. And then he had 2 easier shots later in the game. He didn't end up getting a goal. It was 2:30. I literally could have probably chosen anyone else for 2+ goals and it would have got up, but the value wasn't there. And I chose Rochelle over Pedler. And should have gone with Pedler, but that's punting, and we lost the bet there.
Should have gone Rankine, 4 goals. Yeah, that
5+.
We had that in the first half.
Well, he had 2 goals in the first quarter, and I thought I could have gone Rankine for 3.
We talked about the value.
He was $1.72 for 3, so I didn't love it. You would have had to go 5+, and for him to get 5+, I know it did come off. It wasn't a value bet for me.
I think what people need to remember when we're talking value, we're not talking a good price, but we're talking about the chances of it and the probability of it actually happening. And him, the odd versus him, what was I think it was $1.50 or something for 2 goals.
Yeah, probably even $1.45.
You look at that probability. He's sitting there about 80% of the time, and that's not happening 80% of the time. Like it's not a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I wasn't saying I didn't think he was going to get 2 goals. I just didn't want to risk my money against him getting 2 goals at that price. So we go from there. I had Melbourne in Melbourne GWS, and you talk about a team not taking their chances. It was a very, very wet day, but I did want to talk about this source. I spoke a little bit about it before the show. Melbourne. They see the weather, they see they're there at the ground, and they still decide to go in with Max Gawn, Brodie Grundy, and Ben Brown. You got to pull one of them out and put a smaller player in there, because what happened is Ben Brown or Brodie Grundy would have been subbed out maybe second quarter, maybe start of the third as a strategic sub, but Bailey Fritsch injures his ankle in the first quarter. They can't make that sub. They were way too tall, and GWS were able to run the ball out the other way and were more efficient in front of the sticks.
Especially when it's wet weather football. Obviously, there's 2 ways to play. You got to play small and close to the ground, and you just got to clear the ball. They're the 2 main rules with wet weather football. And you had a lot of the time, if you had a forward in the goal square, you're like, you can sort of recover from that. But their forwards were leaking up the ground as well. There was many times that Ben Brown or even Grundy were up the field, had the ball in their hands. It's like, well, you've got no one to kick it to, and you're making leads out towards the sideline and a small ground. It just strategically, it was a horrible decision, and it really cost them, because this is a game that's going to cost them top 4 position.
Well, yeah, they could have solidified themselves in the top 4, and now they've got to fight for it a little bit more. But Fritsch, the perfect player for wet weather footy, goes down with an ankle injury,
which with already a weak score forward line, that doesn't help Melbourne. Their inaccuracy and the expected score had them winning by about 30 or 40 points, because they should have put them away. But when your main forward goes out, and that's really their only forward structure based around him, they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's not good. He's out for a number of weeks. So that was my bet slip for the week. I didn't even go through the score. So I staked 11 units in the end source, profited of 1.84, because that 2 units on Melbourne, that would have really, really helped me, but was unable to pull it through. So for the season, I'm 18.52 units up for an ROI of 15.5%, which is pretty good.
Well, I only had one other bet that I wanted to talk about, and that was my bonus bet, which I wasn't unlucky. It was it was unlucky in terms of who I placed it on. I had put a bonus bet down from my Friday night game. Sorry, my Thursday night game on the Essendon Port Adelaide game, and I was looking at Essendon have a deficit against big forwards, and I'm like looking at all the scoring shots. I'm looking through, and I'm like, you know what? I like the value with Finlayson, and then literally in the warm up, basically, it gets pulled. Their ruckman gets pulled. He gets put into the main ruck position. He's still got 3 shots on goal, which is pretty great considering he's playing forward. But nothing I could do in that situation. I'll take the loss. It's a bad loss because obviously where they ended up playing and a bad read. But those things happens with laid outs.
They're the risks you take in punting, and you can't win 100%. So you had a bit of a loss for the week, 1.8 units.
I did. It was good to feel human again. Now I understand what your side of the table feels like. Just scraping through. But you know what it was, Pez? What I liked about the rounds is a little bit of fig jam for myself. Is I recognised I had missed and I was having not a good. I had my data wasn't working out for me, so I decided rather than to chase my losses, just to pull back. So I pulled back. I put 6 units down, a loss of minus 1.8, which is unusual for me. I really struggled to get through that sentence. But for the year, still up overall, Pez. 122 units staked, still massive. 43 units returned, and for that many units out there, Pez, I could charge a nice little price for that.
No, don't be talking about little subscriptions and things. There's a couple of controversial things happening
very controversial online at the moment.
Happening around on Twitter, but we won't mention that. We will talk about round 17 though and get into our bets.
The fact that the size of the bets was relatively small.
Our bets with an opportunity about 50 metres out.
I was with a mate and we were getting sort of ready to leave, and he said, I think I'm going to whack 10 on Maxi. Do you want some as well? And I said,
Oh, yes! Yes! Yes!
Straight into the round specials, Pez.
Cyril takes a special and goes bang.
All right, Blue Bet keeping it there. 12 up special this week on all games. Tab have the 3+ leg same game multi on all games if you like that. Sportsbet have the second chance multi, just 2 legs at $2. And if it doesn't win, even if both legs lose, you get a bonus back as well for Thursday and Friday night footy. Ladbrokes have the 1 per day refund. And Neds have 12 up halftime on the Friday as well. You've probably got tokens and things as well. And a lot of people have messaged us over the weeks of a I guess it's a agency that will not be named. PB is the 2 things, which
Pretty bad.
I don't even know what you probably don't know what I'm talking about.
I have no
because
idea
you
what you're
just
talking
shunned it out of your
Deleted
memory.
that company from my brain. They
As,
do not
we,
exist.
we both can't get bets on with them. So they used to offer really good promotions. I'm not sure if they do now, but if they do, take advantage of some free money there while you can until you get banned.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a bar of that anyway. Straight into of course, the great sponsor of the show, Sportsbet, Pez, because they don't ban us. They take our money every week, whether we're winning or losing, which is great. So they just keep it alive.
No.
What?
Stuff Sportsbet. I've been banned from them.
Oh.
Not my alternate account, though.
So you got no bets with Sportsbet?
I do. I've got an alternate account. And
Don't give away the tricks of the podcast. Tricks of the
I
trade.
say that most weeks.
All right, let's get on to a really interesting Thursday night. The draw last week, as I said, keeping Sydney's season still alive. Richmond still floating and flirting with an opportunity to make the 8 with only 2 games out of the 8 at the moment. Richmond taking on Sydney at what will be predicted as a wet MCG, but it looks like the weather is clearing a little bit here. $1.90 even money. This is closed as the week has progressed. -5 is the line. Sorry, -0.5 is the line. Over under 160.5. This is going to be a huge game, Pez. I believe that you and I are going head-to-head in this one, so really interested to hear your thoughts about why Richmond can get it done.
Hey, spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry.
Spoiler alert here. But some really interesting things to look at, and this is my favourite game to look at for the week because I had some time today to look once the disposal markets actually came out, Sauce. So you'll love to see it. There's no Jaden Short this week, so he's out. And I need to mention the tagging thing because every time I end up putting a bet out on a team that Sydney's playing against, there's always people that go on about Ryan Clark and how he's a tagger. He hasn't been tagging.
Did you know he tags?
He hasn't been tagging in the past month. He was the sub last week. So
I saw him running up the sideline with some guy in pink that
I'm not too worried about Ryan Clark in his tagging role. So there's a few disposal things that I don't mind for tonight as well. So I just want to mention Daniel Rioli. He's over unders 21.5. He's taken kick-ins every week, except in round 14 against the Saints where he didn't take one. I'm not going to put a bet on it because Rioli is going to be a little bit hit or miss. And if he does take 4, 5 of those, he's a chance to cover it. But if he doesn't, he's a chance to go under. And I'm not going to take a punt on that. The ones I am going to go at is Taranto. He had a tough outing last week against Brisbane, but so did everyone for Richmond. They got absolutely spanked. 80 points. He's a high quality player. He spends 80+% of time in centre bounces. He's over under is at 29.5. So I really, really like that on Bet365 for $1.87. He's $1.53 and below for 30+ disposals on Ladbrokes, Neds and Tab. So there's a big discrepancy in that price. So I'm taking the over 29.5 at $1.87 for Taranto. The other one, this is risky just because of his role. And I'm talking about Liam Baker. His over-under sits at 18.5 at $1.89. He had 31% centre bounce attendances last week, but seemed like he played forward a little bit more as well. But I'm taking the risk on with Short out that Liam Baker will slot back into that back line. And if he does, Sydney give up a lot of disposals there. So if I'm right about his role, he should cover this easily. If I'm wrong about it, he's on the border of getting 15. So in Short's absence, 3 times without Short this year, Baker's had 32, 25 and 35 disposals. So I'll go a bet there at over 18.5. Sportsbet have the little special. We're going to make a 10-minute video on this. I've just gone 4 of them, not any over-unders, just 15 plus and 20 plus, 25 plus. So I've gone Baker at the 15 plus. He sits at $1.26 by himself. Sheldrick, 15 plus, $1.16. So he's been crunched down from $1.20 at the start of the week. Hopper, 20 plus, $1.40. I don't mind him to get 20 plus because he's one of their main midfielders as well. I bet on him once before this season and he got injured in the second quarter. And Taranto 25 plus sits at $1.22, so good for a little risk on the same game multi there. $2.40 with the Sportsbet special. And I'll let you talk about your bets and then I'll speak about my head-to-head one.
Well, I think that the Sportsbet and the betting agencies have left the Richmond midfielders open a little bit because of the uncertainty of what's going on in that midfield. There's been a lot of shuffles over the last probably month or so with, Cochin coming in and out of that midfield. Dustin Martin comes into the midfield through bits and patches. So, it leaves some gaps in there for value as you just spoke about. And if you get that prediction right and you're looking at the trends within the game, and there's some money to be had there. So I don't mind your little multi there, Pez, for your first half and first part 1 of 7 videos that you're pumping out about Richmond versus Sydney. I really like the Swans in this one. I think that if you look at the last month of football, the Swans have been slowly building. They're about to put probably their second best lineup on the park, just missing Warner. And I believe that if you look at the expected score last week, as we spoke about against Geelong, they beat Geelong. They were pretty good against Geelong, except for their goal kicking. They should have won that match by about 30 points or more. The week before, they absolutely thumped West Coast. They look, that's a bit of an anomaly. Everyone thumps West Coast, but we say that, yet not everyone has thumped West Coast because a lot of teams are struggling to get over that 80-point line. They put 200 up on them. They're looking good. I really like the even money at this. I jumped on earlier in the week. $2 blue bet. I put 2 units on that one. Historically, it's a 50-50 game for them. They've Richmond and Sydney both have played each other 34. They've won 34 versus 36. The last 5 games, 2 and 3. At this venue, 14 and 12. So it's a head-to-head game, a bit of a coin toss. You give me $2, you know where I'm going with that one. So my first bet is with the Swans blue bet 12 up special, of course. The second one is following a trend from last week, and it paid off last week against Brisbane, despite Dunkley going down with an injury. But they give most of their disposals away to the main midfielders as well as the backmen. So I really like Sydney's backmen in this one. They're the number 1 team for giving up intercept marks, Richmond. So I'll straight away look at Sydney. Who gets the most intercept marks? Your man, the snake, Big Blakey. So I go with him to get over his disposal mark, which is sitting at 22.5. I think he'll get that easy. He had a big week last week against the Cats, and if you can do good against the Cats in disposals, then the Richmond Tigers should be pretty easy. And the second one that I'm going with is a little bit of a risk because I'm unsure about the role he's going to play, but I like the 15 or more for Florent. Only missed it twice this year, and that was back in round 9 and 8. And the rest of the year he's got that. $1.45, I like that to bump up my odds. That gets me odds of $2.30 Pez, 2 units with Sportsbet. Any leg fails, money back in bonuses.
Yeah, interesting little analysis on Sydney there. I'm going to put a unit on Richmond at blue bet with the 12 up.
I like your analysis there, and I'm going to go against it.
Just purely because of the MCG factor, and Sydney's struggling to come down to Victoria. I know Sydney have their best team on the park for the year, and they've been getting players back in the last month or so. But Richmond, a bounce back spot, travelling back from Brisbane after an 80-point win. I think the game can go either way, and probably one of the only reasons I like putting this up is with the 12 up special. Just if one of those teams can get 12 up at halftime, it can pay out, and then they can still lose as well. So MCG factor, Sydney have won 1 game in Victoria this year, which they probably shouldn't have because North Melbourne gifted it to them, and they really struggled. They struggled against Melbourne, they struggled against Collingwood, and they struggled against Geelong. That was down at Geelong, but it was in Victoria. So another bet on that, which takes me to 4 bets for the game.
Wow, loading up all over Richmond on this one. You can tell that Pez and I are heading to the pub tonight to watch the footy because he wants to have his phone out. He wants to have a couple of bevies and follow all these different stats.
That might not be my last bet.
I can tell you what, mate, it won't be my last bet, but it'll be the last one on the pod for that. But good to see us going head to head over the years. Head to head, I reckon we're about even on the head to head, Pez.
Yeah,
I know this season I'm beating you, but
I did. It was 1-1 this year, but I did look it up and. Over over the course of 6 years, I'm 107 wins and you're 3. So
God, you're making up some absolute shit this year.
You got one of those points this year, which was disappointing. But
I believe we've only been head to head once this year, and I won that one. And
if you go back,
even still, then you corrected me. You're like,
go back
one
in our lifetime, past 6 years, you're still on 3, and I think I jumped to 256 or something like that. So it's in my favour.
I wish Sportsbet had this made up point system that you've implemented here, Pez, because one win that you have is worth about 180 one time and then 30 the next.
No, you've made up stats this year about me, so just giving a little bit back.
Well, the one place I haven't made up stats is on the actual AFL games, and I'm very excited for this next one because this absolutely will be a cracker. If the Western Bulldogs are the team that everyone says that they are, this will be an opportunity for them to jump into the top 4 and really, take the spot that has been offered up by Melbourne. They take on Collingwood at 2.45. Outsiders are the Doggies. $1.53 favourites are Collingwood. Minus 10.5 is the line. Over under 165.5. This game is played at Marvel, which I'm really surprised that this one hasn't been moved for how much hype goes into games in Melbourne and how packed out this will be. It'll be a sellout tomorrow under lights. It'll be an absolute cracking game.
Yeah, well, it's a Doggies home game, isn't it? So they get to play it at Marvel. A lot of Collingwood fans will miss out on going to the game, which they won't be happy about. They obviously have the biggest voice in footy. I've loved Jamara Ugle-Hagan. How long ago did I mention watching him, and he wasn't spoken about in the media, and now everyone seems to be on him because his hands are clean, as I said, over a month ago. So Jamara Ugle-Hagan, he's a really good watch, and he's really developing as a great player. And you've got to give key forwards and especially ruckmen when they're drafted early on, you got to give them time, Sauce. And a lot of people these days jump on 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids, but you got to give them a few years in the system. These surprising stat here: they've only played each other once per season since 2020. So it's really strange to me. So 2020 they played once, 2021 they played once, 2022 they played once, and now they're in 2023 for their first meeting of the year, which is quite strange. But this one, in 2022, the Pies, they give up a lot of disposals to midfielders this season.
A heap.
And against the Bulldogs, I did want to get a little history behind it. They gave up 437 disposals against the Dogs, and the top 5 for the Dogs had 31 plus disposals. They were just getting it everywhere. The Bulldogs did win both of these games as well that I'm going to speak about. 2021, they gave up 466 disposals, which is very, very high. And the Dogs' top 4 players that night had 30 plus. And they had all the top disposal getters in those 2 games. We know the Bulldogs midfield is quite strong, so you got to try and pick the right one. And I'm leaning towards Treloar at the moment, over 29.5 at $1.87 on Bet365. He's got low prices in the $1.60 mark for a 30 plus elsewhere. But I'm not locking that in yet. I just want to see teams. I want to see a little bit of things, and that'll go out on Twitter if I decide to lock it in. If nothing goes out on Twitter, then it's a no bet from me, but that's where I'm leaning towards.
Yeah, love that lean. We spoke about this last week. Collingwood just seemed to, the way the style of football they're playing is just moving the foot forward, and what it does is they just worry about doing their game plan. It allows their main midfielders for the opposition to get a heap of the pill. We've documented this heaps, Pez, about the Western Bulldogs, how they rack up a heap of the pill and they go round and round in circles and they get a heap of the pill, but they don't always, damage their opposition, so they don't always put it on the scoreboard. I'm expecting exactly what you said. Treloar to get a heap of it. You look at I actually had a bet ready to go and pull the trigger, but just hearing that line on Bet365, I might actually wait until tomorrow to see what Sportsbet's disposal line is. I had him for 30.5 or 30 just straight out to get 30 or more, which is quite low odds. So if I can get a little bit of value for there, I might jump on that one. But the other player that I'm going to target is Marcus Bontempelli. For him to get 25 or more, he's averaged that the last 5 weeks. He's got that pretty easy. I expected them to put him in the midfield and a really big body midfield to sort of combat the uncontested football that the Western Bulldogs play. The Collingwood play. So really put it in there. The other person that I really like, but I'm just a little bit uncertain on the role he's going to play, is Tommy Liberatore. I love the way that he goes about his footy, and I think that this is going to be an absolute matchup heaven for him. And him to get 20 or more is sitting at $1.10. I love that. I'll be looking at him for 25 because it jumps up quite significantly, about $1.65. So I think there's some value there. I will wait till the disposal lines to see if I can sneak a market, but disposals, all for the Dogs. That's where I'd be targeting.
Yeah, excellent. That's what we want to talk about. And Treloar, it was very tempting to lock it in now, but I did need to see a few more a few more things in my favour.
Speaking of things in favour, we look at the next matchup.
Oh, it's a big one.
I know everyone is talking about things that we haven't seen before. An 87.5 line.
Oh, I don't care about the line in this one.
Have a look at this on Sportsbet. The most popular things they've put in other markets just to try and get a little bit of interest from you. From the main home screen, Brisbane versus West Coast, of course, up at the Gabba. I don't even know how to pronounce that, Pez. The what's 1.0005. So what's that? 500
half of $1.
Half of $1. So that's the odds for Brisbane.
So
basically,
don't bet that.
So if you bet that, you lose money. I think so.
Not
and
just.
surprisingly, only a $34 price for West Coast. The line, as we said, 87.5, over under 186.5, and then they've got a third one in there, a try bet on the Sportsbet home screen. Either team by 15 or more or less points, $41, and West Coast minus 15.5. Just a lazy $501 line. So, Pez, tell me, I'm really interested to hear if about your analysis of this game. Obviously, we're going to be on Brisbane, but I want to know if by the end of it, if Brisbane, if you're even enticed by that line, or what your thinking is when you see a line that big.
No, the only reason you really look at lines that big is when you're looking at alternate lines and you're trying to, win a bonus bet or get something like that. At 86.5 points for $1.90, it's not good. Anything can happen. Brisbane can, pull the pin and sit back a little bit in the second half. They can... Lots and lots of things. So I'm not interested in head-to-head. I'm not interested in the line. Where I am interested is disposals, because the main disposal players have been absolutely having a feast against the Eagles all season. And the thing that makes it even better, not that it's good that he got injured, but Dunkley, just seeing that it is going to be confirmed that he's going to miss on Saturday. And if Dunkley's out, that frees up a spot at centre bounce attendances, because he's 80+% in there. He's ready to go. They always look to him out on the wing. So they've got to have other avenues to do that now. So I'm looking at McCluggage, I'm looking at Ashcroft, and I'm looking at Lockie Neal. The only risk I have is obviously an injury, or one of those players gets rested and gets subbed out early on because, a tactical sub and they can rest them. But I assume bookies will adjust to their lines. I haven't seen the lines come out yet, so I'm going to have a look on Friday afternoon, maybe even Saturday morning. But those are the three players that I'm looking, and if their numbers aren't high, I might even jump on all three of them to go over their line.
Yeah, it's a tough one. You're right. You don't even look at the line in this one. Just looking through tab at some of the alternate lines. I don't mind the plus 92.5 for West Coast at $1.65. I think that's not a bad little treat there you can get. A little.
Might as well go the plus 86.
No, extra
for $1.90.
Hey, an extra
goal.
Extra goal. You like that?
Lose 30 cents.
But I think this is an interesting spot for Brisbane, because they're going to be a team now. What they've seen other teams do to West Coast is that percentage is becoming a big part of it, because you need to fill up against West Coast. I love what you said about McCluggage coming into that midfield. He'll get a lot more time in there, and he'll probably rack up the possessions there as well. Same with Ashcroft. We know his history's been documented of how he plays in Brisbane versus how he plays away. This game is in Brisbane. They're playing a weaker side, a much weaker side.
A big percentage boost will really help the Lions as well, yeah.
I think it's something that you need to be mindful of, just seeing a big line and going, hey, that's a ridiculous line. There's no way they cover it. Brisbane have a lot of incentive to make sure that they cover this, because they are going to be fighting for a top 4 spot, obviously, but then also a home final. So
if they're fighting for top 2, they're 2 games behind Port and Collingwood. But their percentage sits 11% behind Collingwood and 9% above Port. So they'd want to boost that up as much as they can, because if they're going to get top 2 spot, they're probably going to finish on the same wins as either Port or Collingwood.
Yeah, and that's it's almost, the percentage is almost playing a game in hands because of how big a discrepancy it is. You look at Port Adelaide, whenever they play any of the lesser sides, they're going to be really piling it on. For me, there's not a lot of value in this game until the disposals come out, because
that's what we want to see.
Not until the disposals come out, because as soon as we see those over-under markets, you can see where the value is going to be. But if you look at the 20s and the 15s, there's not a lot there. I would definitely be trying to avoid defenders in this game for Brisbane, because West Coast generally don't go forward a lot. They give away a lot of disposals to that forward half of the ground, obviously. And Brisbane are a team that get it out of the middle quickly. So just be mindful of who you're targeting, and don't just look back at your averages of the last month.
Yeah, especially on the team. And be careful if you're putting together same-game multis as well for this game, because you're going to lose value if you put it on now before the over-unders come out. We've already seen discrepancies this round with, Treloar at $1.87 to get 30 plus on Bet365, whereas $1.60 in other bookies. So you're going to lose a lot of value if you do it now.
You definitely are. Speaking of value, I think this is an absolute spot for value if you are looking for disposals. These two teams have been giving up a heap of the pill, Pez. GWS taking on Hawthorn. GWS, Pez, actually have screwed us a little bit. They're one win away from going on their over-under of our total wins from the start of the season, which is disappointing. So
yeah, disappointing for you.
You backed them as well, mate. We had the exact same bets.
No, we didn't.
Did we?
I had Essendon and you had GWS.
Oh, well, we're both right. All right, well, $1.21 favourites are the Giants. $4.35 is Hawthorn. Minus 28.5 is the line over under 171.5. Hawthorn are starting to look more of that bottom four side that they have, that we predicted since Sicily's been out. He's out another week this week. GWS starting to really get a lot of their numbers, and they're sitting 10th at the moment. They'll make a real push for finals. They would look to blow this one right open against the Hawks.
Definitely. And I don't love a big line with the GWS side. I don't know how I can trust them, but they played a thriller last time. And that was in, what was it called? Gather Round in round 5. Yep. So the Giants will look to just overrun and have a big win here against the Hawks with their season still alive after last week. Saturday, looking at the weather in Blacktown or wherever it is, looks 19 and sunny on the weather report. So hopefully the weather person is right on the old iPhone. And it's a great day for footy and great day to be playing the Hawks with no Sicily, which you've already mentioned as well. So I had a look at some different discrepancies again, and I looked at who's going to kick the goals. Your trend from earlier in the season of forwards kicking, 4+ and beyond. I don't even need to go that high, because Jesse Hogan, he missed a couple of weeks ago. Last week was not a game for forwards. So I'm not taking note. There was only 42 points scored. He's not going to kick many goals in that. So Hogan, to get some goals against this Hawks defense, I absolutely love it. I've gone to find 3+ goals. It's at $2.70 on Ladbrokes or Neds. Elsewhere, you can get $2.40, I think, on Tab, and even worse than that, $2.10 on places like Bluebet and things like that. So $2.70. I'm going to load into that because Jesse Hogan, 3+ against this Hawks defense. Yes, please.
Yeah, you've literally, in my notes here, I've gone my standard bet, and then I've got here, if you have a bonus, chuck it on this, and that is straight on to Jesse Hogan for 4+ goals. So if I get a bonus bet this round, which hopefully I don't, hopefully I'm in the clear, and if I am in the clear, Pez, I might even put a nice little 1 unit down for him to get 4 or more. It's sitting $4.80 on Sportsbet at the moment, and I love that value because, Hawthorn give away the most leads and marks within 50 at a massive 8.6 on average per game. Now, GWS aren't really a leading forward team, but they are a team that generally gets their goals from smaller forwards. Whereas the problem that Hawthorn has, and where's the deficit we've seen over the last, 12 rounds, it's all been to big, bustly forwards. Last time they played, redemption game, Pez, 2-3 Hogan kicked from outside 50, a lot of those ones. So I like him for a bit of value. The 3+, you love that. I'll probably include that in another multi later on in the round.
If it's not a bonus you're putting down, better odds on Ladbrokes, $5.50 for 4+.
$5.50. Jesus,
that's nice.
Love that. And like everything points to him having a big game, and with Hawthorn's deficit against bigger forwards. Where my money is this week is in disposals. I spoke last week about Hawthorn, the main 4 blokes that rack up the pill, and they did it again last week. Connor Nash fell too short for his 20, and that was the first time in almost, I think it was eight rounds that they've missed that. I sent you a multi just before the bounce last week. Decided not to go with it with some of the uncertainties of the roles that they're going to be playing in there.
Yeah, you can thank me for that.
I can thank you for that one. I just did. Was that not a thank you? Jesus. Gosh, you have one round where you beat me and you are acting like the biggest flog in the world. GWS give away the most, 4th most disposals, and they both of these sides, Hawthorn and GWS, are second and third for the amount of pill that they collect themselves. So these teams just sort of do what they do and don't really worry about the opposition, which I really, really like. And so does my alarm there. That gives me a nice little tick of approval. This week I'm going a same game leg multi, Warple to get 25, Day to get 20, and Newcombe to get 20. That gives me $2.10 on Neds. 2 units on that one. Money back if one leg fails, Pez, with one of those disposals. The tokens. But I like the value for disposals in this one.
Yeah, take that. And cheeky $41 for Hogan to kick 6 on Ladbrokes. So there you go.
Just I might just double down on that one. I don't mind that at all, especially with what they need to get into the 8s. I like the value there. Speaking of value, I love the value in this one. St Kilda taking on Melbourne, $2.65 are your Saints, Pez, $1.49. The injured, depleted Melbourne, $1.49. Minus 13.5 is the line. Over under 159.5.
Yeah, Clayton Oliver confirmed another 3 to 4 weeks out after his little fracas with a trainer last night, which was a video going around everywhere from the news agencies and things like that. Did you see that?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of verbalization. Did you like it? What did you think?
It's probably not what he needs at the moment to bring attention to himself with what's going on, considering he's continually missing weeks of footy after what was suspected to be a 2 or 3 week injury, and now this will be the 6th week
there's a
without
blister,
playing.
There's this complaint.
Yeah, it sounds like there's something else going on there.
3 to 4 weeks, not good. Bailey Fritsch went for surgery as well, which is not good considering he's your main forward up there.
Considering he's their only forward, he's the only person kicking goals for Melbourne.
At Marvel, now this is going to sound really strange. As a St Kilda supporter myself, I was very nervous about last week playing against West Coast, and I said that it was a big danger game and it was a perfect game for West Coast to be playing, or perfect team to play in St Kilda after a 171-point loss. This week, I'm actually confident that St Kilda can compete with Melbourne under the roof at Marvel Stadium. So I don't mind the defence down at St Kilda. I think if we can stop that midfield in Petrarca and Viney, with no Oliver there, that St Kilda, if they can just even that, get a couple of good entries inside forward, maybe Max King can come out and kick 3, something like that. I think St Kilda can get over the line, and I think their value head-to-head, because I just want to enjoy this game. I'm not putting a bet down, but that's where I would be going in this one, Sauce.
I totally agree. I think that the line is extreme value, minus 13.5. A team that is lacking their key forward, that the last couple of weeks has documented their struggles going forward. There seems to be some selection issues with the coach. Last week we spoke about the tall forwards. You got Ross Lyon coming in, and this is when he normally flourishes towards the end of the season. He set up that defensive structure. We saw him try to be a little bit more offensive against West Coast. They were trialling some things. I believe he goes back to the drawing board in this one. They contain Melbourne, and they make this game really competitive. I like the head-to-head in this one. As you said, it's a nice little blue bet. That's maybe where you sort of poke some value for it, that 12-up special, but 13.5 line for a team that I think has a decent sort of shot. I love that. I am going to wait until the teams are confirmed properly, and I can make sure that exactly what I'm getting for my 13.5, but I like that 13.5, so that's probably where I'm going to lean.
Yeah, with some players missing, that's not too bad. Port Adelaide and Gold Coast.
Yes, $1.17 favourites are the Power, $5.10 outsiders Gold Coast, minus 30.5 is the line, over under 153.5. It was a bit disappointing seeing Gold Coast perform that way in front of a sold out, what do they call it up there? The Suncorp Stadium? No, that's the Brisbane. What do they call?
Heritage Bank now.
Heritage Bank. I can never keep up with that one. But it's a bit disappointing that they put that sort of performance, but that's what you sort of expect of the Gold Coast Suns. They're a young side. They're inconsistent, and Port Adelaide will be looking for 13 straight after a close escape at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, it was a bit disgusting in the performance for the Gold Coast, especially if you've been keen on them this season, and they had some really good wins up in Darwin, which kind of makes it more likely. Just maybe do a little bit of a relocation, because they seem to be decent up there and beat a couple of good sides up there as well.
They did lose to the best team in the comp, the premiership favourite, but the scenes after the game with Stuart Dew and just the frustration on that.
It's not a good look at
It's
this
not a
footy
good
club.
look, yeah.
And now they got to travel to play against Port Adelaide. How many in a row? They won 11, 12, something
12
like that?
straight.
12 straight. So it's not good.
Hinkley doesn't.
But this is a Gold Coast opportunity. They've got no expectation to win this game. Nothing at all. They've got effort to fight for. They've got people's careers to fight for this week. So they need to put in effort. They don't need to win the game by any means. But They need it not to be a blowout like it was last week. So I'm just going to stay away from this one. I don't think anything too much of it. Disposal lines come out a bit later, but I'm going to leave this one fully alone and not put anything out this round for this game.
The only thing I'd be worried in this one is that Port Adelaide, that whole old wives' tale of you need to drop one before finals, and
they need to win this one to get top two.
They need to win this one to be top two, but the 30.5 is enticing. Gold Coast, a couple of years ago when they put up performances like they did last week, it's because you go, oh, they're inexperienced and they haven't got the talent. Their best player and their worst player on their 22 is not that far in distance. So they're quite competitive when they all put it together. They had a bad week, which happens. Young side, you expect that. I expect them to bounce back. 30.5 is a pretty decent sort of line. Port Adelaide will be pretty complacent. They're feeling pretty untouchable, I reckon, after that Essendon that win there. But you are right. They definitely need to win. So the $1.17, no value. The $5.10, definitely no value. Plus 30.5, I don't mind. I'd probably lean towards that if I had to put a bet down. But otherwise, I'll be steering clear and... Hoping to see Gold Coast bounce back a bit and show a bit of heart, because Stuart Dew he's been putting his job on the line, and the club has not confirmed, and they were not very convincing whether they're going to keep him on board through that press conference.
If the AFL are going to step in, they're going to try and convince Alistair Clarkson to go up there and coach that club.
Yeah, I don't. Why would you want to? There's nothing there. Like, Stuart Dew looks like he wants to be there. The boys seem to back him. He seems like when you watch the documentary, he seems like a good coach. Just like a lot of the reasons that they are where they are is not because of decisions he's made. Like, they traded away Ballard for pick 2. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that sort of stuff that's not his decision. He has to. It's their list manager.
Yeah, they've got some poor deals. They've got some good players back in, like Weller, but the deal
Shocking.
wasn't good. So.
All right, speaking of not good, let's get on to North Melbourne on the Sunday time slot. $1.10, I was about to say. 1:10 time. Geelong Cats taking on North Melbourne. $1.06 favourites are the Cats. $9.50 outsiders, the Kangaroos. Minus 48.5 is the line.
48.5, it's big.
Over under 171.5. Pez, I'm not confident about this line. Geelong have been extremely inconsistent this year. North Melbourne have been building, and I do believe by the end of the year that they will sneak one. If this game was at Marvel, I'd be leaning towards North Melbourne at the plus 40.5, but GMHBA Stadium, Alphabet Stadium, you can't go against the Cats.
Oh, you can't. And North Melbourne, they don't really need to win, but Geelong really, really do, sitting 9th on the ladder there. The draw kind of takes their percentage out against most clubs as well. Mm-hmm. So they just need to bank this 4 points this week. They still... if they get a percentage boost, they get a percentage boost, but I don't think they're too worried about that. If I was to lean anywhere off the top of my head without looking at anything, I'd be looking at Gary Rowan to score some goals. With Jeremy Cameron out of that side, he's a good lead up forward and a good set shot at goal. Other than that, Sir Swamp Thing on Twitter pulls out a decent stat today that Brent and Cooper Harvey, who's debuting this week, Cooper Harvey, will start in 17th spot overall for games played by a father and son pairing. Playing in his first game, and they start at 17th with Brent Harvey playing a shitload of games. So there you go.
What a great little nothing stat, but that tells you about the value.
He does a good job
of the game in this one. Speaking of records, Zach Tui will be putting together a nice little record this weekend, playing the most games as an Irishman. Nothing compared to Jim Steins, who obviously I think it was 200 of those almost consecutively, basically, which is pretty incredible for that. But it's really great to see that sort of talent coming internationally, and he's had a great career with Carlton and Geelong, and he's a great personality of football. He's great to look at. Expect a nice big...
Great to look at, is he?
Yeah, I love watching him play. Do you not like watching him play?
I like watching him play, but is he great to look at? I don't have a picture of him.
He's a good-looking man. He's got the mustache, those big legs,
Jeez, Sauce, you've
expect
really
him to load up
colours.
from 70 out, nice little torp, and you'll get sauce going. So
You got sauce all over your face at the moment, going a bit red there. So what do you got? It's going to be a good night tonight on the beers.
Oh, it's going to be a great night on the beers, and I'll make this quick so we can get to them. This is probably the game of the round for me. Essendon taking on Adelaide. Essendon have been one of the informed teams as of late, almost sneaking an upset against Port Adelaide. Adelaide are great to watch. The only problem with this one is that they're playing at Marvel. Essendon $1.81 favourites. Adelaide $2 for outsiders. Minus 2.5 is the line. Over under 174.5. Pez, bounce back spot for Essendon. Adelaide need to win in Melbourne. This game has everything. Great little narrative for this one.
Everything. 7th versus 8th, 32 points apiece with 8 wins and 7 losses.
This is a great game.
This is amazing. But you look at the percentage of the two clubs. Adelaide 119, Essendon 106. So it shows you that Essendon really struggled to score. I think they're really struggling in their forward line and with an avenue to goal. Their midfield's playing decent here, Sauce. But the problem I've got with Essendon, watching an observation that I've made, is they don't tackle through the middle of the ground. I mentioned on the pod a few weeks ago, and watching them closely, they just don't seem to put enough pressure on. If they just, ran the other way a little bit, tackled a little bit, and upped that pressure, they're not a great tackling side. What have you got for Matt?
Well, they're last in tackling. They're last in tackling
okay.
as it is.
Backs it up.
Last inside 50. So inside 50, they just don't tackle at all, and then they're third last in tackles just in general. So they're not a high tackling side. They don't apply a lot of pressure towards that, especially not only just that defensive line, but they don't have that attacking pressure. So they're quite low in rebound 50s and scores off rebound 50s, which, that perceived pressure up the ground, which it's disappointing for a team that is sitting seventh. You're
surprised to see that kind of stat.
That's normally the effort you get from them. It's not just the top end effort. It's those 1%ers. The pressure inside 50s. The basic, the 1%ers against.
They might get some more smothers and things, but to have 8 wins with this list, they've done all right this season.
They have done really well. Yeah.
Adelaide, this is a huge game for Adelaide. They need to prove they can win away from home, and they've been in winning positions against both GWS away and against the Gold Coast Suns away as well. They need to do that. And then they need to follow it on, and they need to bank the 4 points here. Adelaide are a really good team kicking the ball through the middle of the ground. They've got Jordan Dawson there who does it amazingly. Rory Laird goes through the middle there, and they've been hitting targets left, right and centre. And against this Essendon midfield who don't tackle, they're going to have free reign through the middle of the ground, and their forward line is looking amazing as well with Tex Walker up there, Rankine, Rochelle, who missed his goals last week. But I'm liking Adelaide to win this game. So especially with that 12-up special, because they've been that before away and then gone on to lose the game. So Adelaide blue bet, $2. I'm going to chuck down 2 units on this one, Sauce, because I really think this is the game for Adelaide if they want to play finals, and I think they can really take care of Essendon here.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on that one, Pez. I totally agree with you. I think that they have been building Adelaide, and, we talked about the Jekyll and Hyde effect about them being away from home. They've been building for this. The first time that they played out of Adelaide, they played the Doggies and they got smashed. Next time they play out of Adelaide, they play Collingwood in a game that they probably should have won. If you look at expected score, you look at how they control that game, they'll bring a lot of confidence for this one. They're playing a team that sits just above them. They will absolutely be locked in to win this game.
Hey, they're below them at the moment.
Well, they'll be up. Who? Same.
Adelaide are above them, come on.
Whatever, it doesn't really matter. I was looking at the rankings here and then below them in everything else. So Adelaide will go in with a lot of confidence to this one. Their forward line, they can get goals from anywhere. And that's one of the big things that I'm focusing in on is Essendon. Last week I had a bet for Finlayson to get a lot of goals because they have deficits against tall forwards. Adelaide have got all the forwards. they've got Tex Walker. They've got the big man Fogarty. They've got Rochelle, who's been playing well as a small forward / midfield forward. You've got Rankine, who's amazing. You've got Pedler. But they can score from anywhere. And I just don't think that Essendon have that defensive power to be able to keep up with them. It'll be a close game, I think, but when it comes to shove,
somehow do that.
Yeah,
they're somehow in games and they can steal games,
which is odd for a team that doesn't seem to work defensively, like we just described.
Every single thing except the location of the game points to Adelaide to win, doesn't it?
And exactly right. And you give me $2 odds for that with a blue bet special when they were in a similar position against Collingwood and they took out the 12-up special at halftime. I'll jump all over this one. So Adelaide Crows for both of us, Pez, which is good news for you because we don't have to go head to head and you don't have to make up more rubbish stats.
I could have gone ahead by a bit more.
You could have gone by ahead by. We both picked the same one and you still go ahead. All right, let's go Fremantle on Carlton. Early on, you would have thought this would have been the game of the round because both of these teams have been extremely disappointing. Carlton, they're back. The lid is off. They've beaten 2 teams outside the top 8, outside the top 10 the last month. So they are back, Pez, with Gold Coast and wins over Hawthorn. And everyone's talking about how they're back. $1.74 favourites are the Dockers. $2.10 outsiders, the Blues. -5.5 is the line over under 163.5.
Season on the line stuff here. And I'm disappointed it's not maybe on the Friday night or, a bit closer. So then more things are out because on a Sunday twilight game, I can't be looking at odds and things at the moment on a Thursday. So what I do like is Sarong to get a lot of disposals in this game and Brayshaw to get a lot of disposals in this game. The other thing I don't mind, And I'm definitely not touching this because I've lost too much this season on Carlton. But I might even tip Carlton this week to beat the Dockers over there.
Really?
Yeah, there's just something about it. And the reason, your reaction, that's exactly why I'm not putting money down on it, because it might be ludicrous. But I think I might tip Carlton this week.
Wow. Are you on any tipping comps? Actually, you just jumped me in one of the tipping comps.
Yeah, that's normal as well.
Yeah. I really like Fremantle in this game. Where Carlton?
Don't question yourself.
I'm surprised that you're going with Carlton. That's thrown me really off. Carlton, I put them in a similar spot as what Essendon have been. And if we look at the two teams to play each other, when Essendon played Fremantle absolutely dismantled them. Really poor performance. Carlton, they have struggled. They beat Hawthorn last week, so they should, and they're carrying on about it. They beat Gold Coast off a bye, so they should. You know what I mean? I don't understand this. SBS Stadium.
They're back.
Shut up. Fremantle at SBS Stadium. I love that. $1.74. I expect this to actually close in a lot closer too. All the money seems to be with Carlton, and I'm really surprised with it. So I'll be waiting to get a little bit more value.
Hey, last time they played at this ground, they won by 108 points as well. So just keep that in mind too.
Yeah, cool. And that was the last time that they won for a month, so that was fine. But I will be leaning towards Fremantle and waiting for that money. But $1.74, even minus 5.5 at the line's pretty good. Fremantle at home for me in that one, Pez.
There's the old tip. Tip the Blues.
Okay, for all our listeners on our podcast, Pez, Pez has just shown me his tips, but a nice little reminder for me to do my tips, which I can't because we're filming off. But
we've definitely got to get that done. I've got to remind me to message your mum as well. There we go. So that's a bet slip done for round 17. If you want to find any other things that we put out live, Twitter at Behind the Bound as well. Jump on that. We get a ton of messages asking where our tips are going to be. So the best place is obviously what you're doing right now, listening to the podcast. The next best place is Twitter.
And I think it's really important to remember is that we're not a subscription-based podcast, and we don't give out our tips, and we don't always tip in every game either. So we've had a lot of messages on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok saying, "Hey, what are your tips for this game?" And we don't always have tips for the game. As you hear from us now, we're waiting to see what sort of picture is painted whenever all the data comes out. But if you've got some leans that you're thinking about, more than happy to comment on them. But we're not doing tips for every game.
Yeah, what are you thinking about this? The reason we don't tip and bet every game, Sauce, is because it's not valuable to do that and profitable in the long run. You want to get your value where you can, and if you want to load up, I've got 4 bets in tonight's game, for example, and I'll have no bets on the Sunday.
If you want any bets in tonight's game, just DM Pez, slide into Pez's DM.
The other thing is I don't need people to follow along with my bets. We're doing this because we love footy. We want to talk about it. We've been profitable for 6 years. So I'm just going to continue to do my tips there. We're held accountable on there on Twitter on our spreadsheet. So the proof's in the pudding, and we'll just continue to go.
I am hungry. I could do some pudding and some beers. I don't know if that matches.
I don't know. No, I don't like pudding, but
make sure you jump on. If you are sending us DMs and stuff, continue to do that. Just be aware that we're not going to be doing game-to-game tips. Make sure you jump on Spotify, Amazon Music, Pez. Amazon Music has just been added on. Spotify, all good podcast providers. Leave us 5 stars. Leave us comments so that other punters and podcast listeners can find us. We're up pretty high in AFL as of recently, Pez, which is we're climbing through the ranks. Jump on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and everywhere social media. Follow along with our bets.
The old 5 stars. How's Sunday? I didn't see a DM. I think it was on Instagram or something. I was actually at Disney on Ice with my family. Took my daughter to Disney on Ice and she loved it. And I'm open at in the afternoon, and I'm like, well, you've messaged 3 times. And you're asking for tips in a game. Like I've got a life outside as well, so I'm not always.
This is my full-time job.
I'm not always going to be there in order to do that. So that's another thing as well.
We didn't need to go back and have a go at some of the loyal listeners.
I'm not having a go at loyal listeners. This is just a random
weird
person.
Little flex too. Like I was at Disney on Ice. So.
The first time I've ever been, it was actually very good. Very skillful.
I remember going when I was a little kid. Did they have were they reenacting a certain Disney movie, or was it just a collective?
It was a collective story.
I don't like that.
Oh, fuck me. All right. Jesus Christ.
No, sorry, continue.
I don't need to explain it with the...
Oh, let's get on the beers, Pez. Let's because this is done. I think we're well over.
Yeah. See you later on Pez. Peace out.
I'm still Sauce. We'll catch up next time.